All right. Happy Monday. No, Tuesday. I'm so used to saying happy Monday. Happy Tuesday, everyone. I hope you all had a long and good 3-day weekend. I know I sure did. But we're back at school now. So before we say anything about our new unit, just a reminder that your projects are due this week. If you are a Plan C presenter, you present for me today. If you are a Cohort A presenter, you present for me today. If you are a Cohort B presenter, you'll present to me on Thursday. And if you're writing a paper, it is due Friday at 11:59 p.m. Check Canvas for the assignment to turn that in. Now, keep in mind, and you'll see the directions on Canvas. The same link, those of you that write a paper, you'll turn it in using that link. Those of you that did a presentation, I also want you to turn your Google Slides in on that link, okay? So even if you did a presentation, still got to turn your slides in. If you do a poster or something like that, I'll keep it. But if you did it on Google Slides, you got to turn it in, okay? Let me know if you have any questions, all right? So, we are going to jump right in to one of my favorite topics in all of world history, World War I. But before we get to talking about the war and tanks and airplanes and poison gas and all that sort of stuff, we got to talk about what caused the war. So this week, we're going to talk about the main causes of World War I. And you'll see why I called them the main causes as we get throughout the week. But for right now, let's jump into imperialism. All right. So we need resources. All right. We need raw materials because industrialization, what we just talked about, we're making all these new inventions and having all these new processes to do things, but we need materials to do it. And guess which place has a lot of raw materials? That's right. Africa, South America, and Asia. All right. Africa, Asia, and South America. So, major powers of the world like England, France, Germany, Portugal, Spain, the US, Russia, places like that. Well, not really Russia, but, well, kind of. We'll get there. So, all these major powers are looking for raw materials to use in their factories. They don't find them in their own countries, so they have to go to other places. And while they're there, they think, why don't we just go ahead and conquer this country? They won't mind. Well, they did mind, but we'll talk about that here in a second. So, prior to industrialization, especially in Africa, the focus was the slave trade, right? You take Africans from Africa, bring them to the New World or places in Europe as slaves. Now that slavery has been outlawed after, 1865, slavery is pretty much outlawed in all of the Western world. Now we don't trade for slaves anymore, but we do go into these places and exploit them to take their raw materials, okay? Exploit means to take advantage of. So we take advantage of their raw materials. We steal them. The scramble for Africa. And you'll actually do an assignment for me today about the scramble for Africa and the Berlin Conference, but we're going to talk about it real quick. So the nations of Europe, they were trying to figure out, how do we divide up Africa? So they met up at the Berlin Conference in 1884 to divide Africa among themselves. At that same time, Germany, who had very few colonies, was emerging as a real world power. So Germany kind of called the meeting and they said, hey guys, we're calling the meeting, so we're at the same level as England and France and all you other guys now. We're cool. But Germany's always trying to prove themselves, right? But here's the problem. No African nations or groups were represented at the Berlin Conference that's whole purpose was to divide Africa. Oops. Because if they were, I have a feeling the conversation might go a little something like this. Excuse me, why are you dividing Africa? It doesn't belong to you. But they were not represented, which will lead to a lot of problems all the way up to today, right? So this is, let me move myself out of the way here. All right, there we go. So this is a map of Africa. Obviously, this is Africa in 1880, so before the Berlin Conference. You see here, there's some colonial holdings, right? France has stuff over here. England has stuff in here. That's pretty good, but there's a lot of Africa that's not claimed, not owned, see my air quotes, by any other countries. Now let's look at Africa in 1913, after the Berlin Conference. Look at that. France owns everything in blue. England owns everything in pink. Portugal owns everything in green. Spain owns some stuff. Italy owns modern day Somalia. Let's see. Belgium owns this. This is like where the Congo is. This is Egypt. This is South Africa. This is kind of Algeria, Tunisia, Libya is over here in Italian-controlled area. Germany's got some new places, right? So we've pretty much divided all of Africa among how many countries? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. All these are independent African states, but you can barely see them. Ethiopia is the biggest. But pretty much all of Africa divided up against 7 countries. Not good, right? Not good at all. Oops. So we will talk about that. Hang on. Let me make sure I'm timing myself right. One moment, please. Aha. Okay. Sorry. I had a little old guy moment. You guys always make fun of me being old. I forgot where I was in the slides. So here we go, right? This is Africa 1913. So 1 year prior to World War I beginning, this is what Africa looked like in terms of colonialization and imperialism. Imperialism, that means you're building an empire, right? The British Empire, the French Empire, the German Empire, the Portuguese Empire, the Spanish Empire, whoever's empire, right? The Galactic Empire with Darth Vader, right? No, I'm just kidding. They're not here yet. We'll get to the Galactic Empire, but that's his empire building, imperialism, okay? Oh, let me move myself back over. There we go. And imperialism, as you might have been able to guess, not great, right? European countries and the US had colonies, even though people tell you we didn't, we did. This created several problems. Okay, number one, the people in these areas that were colonized lost control of their homes and their resources. If I were living in Africa and some British guy came in and he said, okay, we own this land now. The king is now your ruler. And by the way, all this lumber and gold and silver and iron and everything, yeah, that's ours too. We're not going to pay you for it. We're actually going to, basically make you get it out for us, and then we'll take it. And then we'll make you kind of join our military. And yeah, it's great, right? No, it's not great. Okay, it is not great. There was racism on a more global scale. If you look at the map I'll show you here in a second, but even think back to Africa for a second, most of the areas that were colonized were home to people of color. And most of the nations that were the colonizers were home to white people, right? Western Europe and the US, yeah, they're white as can be. Like, they look like me, okay? So a lot of these countries, like I said, they were home to people of color, And that led to the belief that the white kind of Western European countries are superior and need to go into these countries where people of color live to educate them. They thought of many nations in Africa and Asia. You'll read a passage today talking about people referring to Africans as savages, right? Savages, not civilized, not intelligent. And the thought was that these Europeans and Americans, we can go in there and we can make these places great. We can build cities, we can build roads, we can educate the people. But those stereotypes really, really grew and they remained in place for a long time. Okay. Some of them are still in place in certain parts of the world. So that's why I said, purpose of learning history, we've got to learn from it. All right. And then cultures were lost, right? These places were modernized with roads and light bulbs and skyscrapers and all sorts of things. But their whole culture before that was lost, right? Because a lot of these civilizations, these nations, these groups didn't have a written language to write books, and their whole culture, their whole customs and ways of doing things were lost to time. And now there are places in the world where we can go and we don't know how people lived 150 years ago because there's no one left to tell us those stories. And as a historian, that makes me super sad because that's a whole group of people that I now cannot learn about. And that was, one of the big kind of effects of imperialism that's not really talked about is we lose whole cultures, whole ways of doing things are lost to time. Right? So just keep that in mind, okay? All right, so here is a map of colonial holdings in 1914, okay? So let's look at England. They're first on the list. They're pink. What does England have? They have Canada. They have stuff in South America. They have a lot of stuff in Africa, in the Middle East. They've got, this is what's called British India. So India, Pakistan, Burma, places like that, Bangladesh. They've got Australia. They've got part of Indonesia, right? They've got a bunch of little islands. They've got the Falkland Islands down here. They've got a ton of stuff. Now let's look at the US, right? So we're the US, we're pink. What have we got? We've got Cuba. We've got some other places in the Caribbean. We've got Guam. We've got Puerto Rico. We've got the Philippines right here. A lot of nations had little holdings in China. Japan has the Korean Peninsula. France has a lot of Africa, Madagascar. This is what's called Indochina. This is Vietnam, Laos, and Cambodia. What else? Let's see. That's pretty much all we'll talk about right now. But if you don't know where Vietnam is, that's where Vietnam is. So yeah, every nation that was modern had colonies, okay? And these colonies will play a huge role in World War I and all of world history going forward, even until today. So thanks for watching, guys. I hope you all are having an amazing day. Check Canvas for your assignment for today, as well as the links. Oh, it's thundering outside. As well as the links to turn in your projects. Remember, if you write a paper, turn that in. If you use Google Slides, I also want you to turn your slides in, even after you present, okay? If you have any questions, shoot me an email, and have a great one.